All right, football fans, welcome to a Wednesday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, here at the Fans First Sports Network. It's our Whiteboard Wednesday show where we get to talk X's and O's and really about the great game of football with fellow coaches. And I've got a special guest today. We're not going to talk X's and O's, but we're going to talk a global coaching concept with the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Coach Kevin Stefanski. Welcome back to the show, Coach.
Yeah, Coach Smith, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, Coach Stefanski and I did a show about a year ago. We actually did it in a weight room where the acoustics weren't so good. And we talked about quarterbacks. And today I thought we would talk about what goes into being a head coach in the NFL. I mean, it is a monstrous undertaking. So I wanted to start with this question, Coach. You're headed to training camp next week. And I think a lot of people see that as the beginning of the season. But you've been grinding away at this for a while. Your 2024 season ended the first week of January. When did your 2025 season begin?
The next day. For the coaches, for us and the front office, and really that next day, you're starting. And there's a lot that goes into getting ready for the players. So it's really kind of a two-part thing. Players would tell you that next season maybe starts in April when they show up for the offseason program. And in a lot of cases, they're right. But for myself, for everybody in our building, coaches, staff, and otherwise, it really starts the next day.
So what does that process look like? Do you begin with a self-scout? Do you begin with a player evaluation, all the above?
All the above. And really, I think some teams do it a little bit differently. I think everybody probably does the same thing. How they get to it is different. And for instance, you mentioned self-scout. And self-scout is an important thing. And what it is it's an inward look. You know, so often we're getting ready to play whomever. Like we're playing the Steelers, your favorite team, and we're studying the Steelers. Well, at the end of the year, you need to study yourself. And it's so important to understand what your opponent sees in you. So there's a lot that goes into that. And what we'll do is we'll break it up. We'll slice and dice it every which way you can. So first and run pass, 1st and 10 versus 2nd and long, short yardage versus 3rd and 3 to 6, and look at every single area. And that's where the coaches kind of have their projects to look at everybody. I do know of some teams that will have the defense watch their offense and their offense watch the defense, that they can look at it through their lens, which is certainly another way to do it. So you're looking at yourself. You're also looking at your players. Really, one of the first things you do as coaches, aside from having your meetings with your players and sending them on their way, is you spend time and you write up your players, quote unquote. You talk about what their strengths are, their weaknesses are, things that you can help them get better at, things that maybe you can't help them get better at. And that's important information for your personnel department as they start to embark on that player acquisition period. And that's fortunately, if you're lucky, you're the last two teams standing and you're playing in that Super Bowl, because that pushes all that work back. But if you're not, and if you're in the playoffs, obviously that's the goal. If you're not, you have some teams that really the first thing they'd be doing is the Senior Bowl, which is usually at the end of January down in Mobile, and that's an important part where a lot of those guys are getting together, and you're getting to see guys practice versus good, quote unquote. Get into February, that's really getting into as you get into February, you get into the combine into March, and then free agency, draft, et cetera, et cetera. But early on, the heavy lifting, I would say early on after the season ends, is really understanding yourself, both schematically and from a personnel lens.
And you as the head coach obviously have to make some decisions, not just on players, but on your coaching staff as well. How much of that really just falls on you, and how much of that is the ownership group, the general manager, et cetera, involved?
Yeah, it's interesting. The coaching staff is such an important, it's a living, breathing thing. And you've been on so many staffs yourself, and you know that. And I always tell people it's a big puzzle when you put that together. And some pieces are bigger than others, a coordinator or an O-line coach or something. But you better have all those small pieces too, or it won't fit. And that's where, we spend a lot of time going through the process, understanding what the best fit for our organization is. And listen, hiring and firing is a part of the business. It's not the most fun part. It's labor intensive. These are real people that you're dealing with, real friends and with families, and there's really tough decisions. And like you mentioned, though, what you try to do is you try to have conversations with everybody, understand what you feel like is best for the team. Because ultimately, that's what I'm charged with. And that's what myself, Andrew Berry, our general manager, we're charged with doing what we think is best for the organization. And sometimes that can be hard because you have personal relationships with people. And then the other part of this business is, guys, if you're having success, you lose coaches to promotions, which is outstanding. That, I love that when guys and girls are getting opportunities around the league to better themselves. And one of my main jobs is to develop coaches, is to hopefully have a bunch of young coaches that we can lean into, that we can develop from in a variety of ways, but ultimately with the idea that we're going to make sure that they're in a position to better themselves as well.
Yeah, it must be flattering. Like I look at the Detroit Lions. Here Dan Campbell has built this really impressive team out of a perennially poor franchise, and then they get to, I think they were 15-2 this past year, and then both his coordinators get cherry picked. If you have to replace your coordinators like that, because you've done this, are you looking for individuals who, you respect the way they coach, you like their X and O's, you think that there are up and comers that are going to be great at the job, or are you looking for guys that are going to be in lockstep with you personally? Is it more of a, hey, I'm evaluating who fits the Cleveland Browns best, or who do I think might be the best coordinator?
I think it's a good question. I would tell you I've never been afraid of working with somebody that I don't know. I think there's always this thing where, hey, surround yourself with your guys, and loyalty, and to me, you earn loyalty. I hired some when I first put that staff together in 2020. Of course I hired some people I knew because I knew they were good coaches. I also hired some people I didn't know, but because I had done my homework and done the research on them, done the reference work on them, I knew it would be a good fit for our team. It wasn't super important that I had a personal relationship with that coach, because I think that's my job, and our job as in positions of leadership is to get the best out of everybody, regardless of the personality fit. Now, you hope that it's good and you enjoy working together, and that's by and large, I hope to God that's been the case with our place. But I do think it can be a trap to just hire people that's a really dangerous thing. So I get that it cuts both ways, but I think if you hire really good coaches that are good fits for your organization, and then that whole idea of being loyal, that's something that you earn through real, authentic relationship building with people.
Hmm. It is crazy how much time you spend with these guys. It's an
Oh man,
extended family.
yeah, we go down in the submarine together.
Yeah.
We're in the submarine for 6 months. There's not a lot of room, so you better get used to everybody.
Right. Now, you get into that off season, and late February is the combine. Free agency begins almost immediately after that. How much do you have to lean on your scouting and your personnel people in that process? Because obviously you and just, a few assistants can't possibly evaluate all of these individuals alone.
Yeah, it's a fun process, and I hit it, or I think of it as a young coach, as a position coach. When I was a tight end coach, for instance, I knew everything there was to know about the tight end class that year, from the first rounders to the guys I loved, trying to find those diamonds in the rough, watching tape from one double A football, doing like all my exercises to unearth some diamonds. So as position coaches, you become experts on at your position of those players. Uh, as coordinator, you really have to lean on the GM. Hey, give me the what positions do I need to watch? Because you can't watch everybody. It's not possible. So and then as a head coach, it's very similar. It's like, okay, what positions are we going to be looking at? Hey, look at the top 6 guys at this position. Then I'm going to have you look at a middle tier at this position, because that's probably more of a mid round selection. So you're being a little bit more intentional by position. I listen. I like the scouting portion of it. I like that whiteboard behind you better. But I do like watching the tape and trying to find those guys. And Kevin Rogers was our old quarterbacks coach at the Vikings. He was a consultant with us for a bunch of years, and he was a longtime college coach, longtime NFL coach. And he used to say, when it came to evaluating players, I'm a young coach. I'm like, okay, how do I watch this tape? And And how do I evaluate these players? He said, just write what you see. He's like, write what you see. And then he said, if you like watching the guy, there's a chance it's a pretty good player. You shouldn't be watching the guy and dreading it. If you're watching it, you're enjoying it. It's a good player. But certainly you have to be, as coaches, when you enter that process, what the general manager, what the personnel department is going to ask of you is to be an expert in your area. You don't. We have scouts to go out there and be information gatherers. So you have all those area scouts that are have their have the Midwest, and they go to into all the schools and they talk to all the coaches and they get all the information on the kid and what type of learner he is and what type of worker he is and all that stuff. We really watch the tape, and then I think everybody does this differently, but I think implementing and collaborating and getting everybody's vision of the player and then putting it all together is that part at the end where the general manager, the head coach, maybe the key decision makers there put the player, ultimately the grade on that player, and then how you rank them. And again, I bet you 32 franchises, everybody does it probably pretty similarly with some nuance in how they meet, some nuance in how they grade. We use a color system. We also use a number system. What is a gold player to us may be considered a red player to another team. And that's kind of one of the funny things that happens when you have coaches that bounce from team to team. It's like, okay, show me your grading scale. It's like, oh, okay, now I need to recalibrate what we're using here. But setting that draft board at the end is really a yeoman's task, and that's where your general manager has to take in so much information off the field, on the field, coaches grade, scouts grade, advanced statistics on the player, so that you can have a complete picture of the player and then set that draft board. And that really doesn't happen. It is a long process. Scouts come in, I'm no expert in this, but scouts come in during the season, then they come in right after the season, then they're back in April for their final draft meetings. But they talk about these players a lot leading up to that final session when you set the draft board.
Now the draft process that it fascinates me. You and I were able to catch up out at the combine. We talked about some of the guys. You did mention at the time that you really liked Dylan Gabriel. You guys wound up drafting him. But I wanted to ask you about when you start to have those top 30 visits. You can bring in the guys that you really want to talk to. Obviously, Cleveland was interested in the quarterback position this year. Are there things that you need to see in those conversations from a quarterback that you maybe wouldn't need to see from, let's say, an offensive lineman or a linebacker? How do you prioritize your discussions with these various prospects?
Yeah, it does vary by position. What we use those 30 visits for, and what that means is you get 30 visits, 30 times to bring 30 unique visits for a player to come into your building and spend 24 hours with you. So typically what we'll do is we'll bring a player in, we'll have dinner the night before, typically with a scout and the position coach coordinator so they can get a feel for the player. And then we'll bring him in early, and then it's a battery of meetings. And we have him really in front of anybody that would touch the player when we draft them. We want them to get a feel for the person. And then in between, one of the fun things we do is we give them an install. Now, particularly with the quarterbacks, I think this is really important when you're talking about quarterbacks, but we will sit them in a big room, and typically it's just them and the coaches and staff. They're the only player in there. And the coordinator, in our case, Tommy Reese, will go through an entire install with the player. We'll let them take notes, give them a notebook, and then that'll go could be an hour and a half, 2 hour meeting. Then we'll break, send them to a bunch of meetings, then give them a couple minutes to study, and then go out onto the walkthrough and have them walk through, literally not at speed, but hey, call a play. We had them put the headset on so they could listen to my voice coming in with the radio, hear the play, call the play, get to the line of scrimmage, execute what they just learned 3 hours prior. And that's this again. These are all data points for a total picture. This is not the be all end all, but you get to see how the player is in the meeting because listen, we spend a lot of time, as you know, in those meetings absorbing football, understanding your opponent, understanding the game plan, those type of things. So we put them through it so we can see what they retain, what was hard for them, and we make it hard. We don't make it easy because and it's not belligerent, but we want to see what they can handle, and we can adjust appropriately as necessary. But it's fun to do that, and if you do it for every single player that you bring in, you have a baseline, and it's the same install, it's the same meeting time, it's the same walkthrough plays, and then you can kind of see who picked it up because there's that thing that everybody talks about with quarterbacks is, he's functional. Well, what does that mean? I mean, there's a bar with young quarterbacks where, hey, you got to get them onto the field. You'll see this in the preseason, right? With all young quarterbacks, it's like, okay, hey man, you got to call a play in the huddle, whether it's a wristband or not. Get to the line of scrimmage, time up a motion, make the right run check. There's a lot that goes into it at times, not all the time, but there's a lot that goes into it. And this gives you a little bit of a glimpse of where the player is in that moment, knowing full well that that's our job is to develop these players and not just assume that they're going to stay that way their whole career.
Is functional a compliment? I'm not. I. How do you
Yeah,
mean that?
yeah. What I mean by that is young quarterbacks in particular. Sometimes you go to a new system and hey, you got to go run the offense, right? You got to go operate. You got to be an operator. You got to be a game manager or whatever. But at the beginning, you got to understand the cadence. You got to understand breaking the huddle. And like when you trade for a player, I was around when we traded for Sam Bradford after Teddy Bridgewater had his injury. And Sam, with how smart he was, he could have played 1 week later for us at the Vikings. He didn't. Went down to Tennessee and Sean Hill played, but Sam was functional plus. I mean, he was functional getting off the airplane, just how smart he was. But if as simple as this sounds, but like cadence, you have to you as young quarterbacks, you have to mimic your cadence to the starter, or a backup quarterback, I should say. You got to mimic your cadence to the starter. Well, these offensive linemen just have been hearing 6 weeks worth of one cadence. You can't come in and do something different. You have to get to that cadence. We did this with Brett Favre in 2009. Like, okay, here's Brett's a little bit different, so this is going to take time. So that's when I talk about the functionality of it. It's all those little detail things aside from like, yeah, drop 5-step drop and rip this, this Okie, this quick out. Like, gotcha. That's one part physical, but then it's all the other things that go into operating that I think is really important for quarterbacks, period, and definitely young quarterbacks.
Hmm. All right, now, Coach, you get to, throughout this offseason process, you get to the draft. And I always would watch on TV, on NFL Network, ESPN, whatever, and they have the war room. And then you pick your guy, and everybody in the war room's high-fiving, et cetera. And the one part of me thought, like, is that orchestrated? But then the other part of me was like, wow, all the time that they spend in this process, when you land your guy, it must be really exciting. How is that war room?
Yeah, well, a couple things. When they announced the pick on TV, that's like it was 10 minutes prior when you made the selection. The TV's not caught up to real time, if that makes sense. So the fun part, and it can be stressful, and Andrew Berry does a great job on that day, but it is fun to watch him operate. I mean, you start to feel it in the room when you get to say 5 picks out, and you're like, okay, here's our pecking order. We got these 3 guys that we really like, or we love this guy, and then if he's not there, we're going to look to get out. But it's really those 5 lead up picks to your pick where it gets real quiet. Phones start ringing. Sometimes you're calling to move up. Sometimes you're calling to move back. Sometimes people are calling to do the same. And then there's pretty good consensus in the room. You kind of all know where. Again, you've had these meetings ad nauseum, so you kind of know where we're going, and you're kind of waiting and hoping on the rest of the league. And I think the other thing to think about once you get out of that first round, that thing is scattershot. I think everybody, all 32 draft boards really start to diverge, if you will, right around pick 33 once you get out of the first round. So there will be some picks that will surprise, quote unquote, the TV audience, if you will. But man, I don't think it's as obvious as that when you talk about 32 teams and 32 draft boards. First 10 picks, first 20 picks, first 30 picks, it's pretty obvious to most people as you watch the tape who are the top prospects. Doesn't mean those are going to be the guys who succeed, but it is obvious who those guys are. Once you get past that number, though, man, that thing can go anywhere.
Hmm. So after the draft, coach, now we're finally into some actual work with some of these guys. You have a rookie mini camp, you have some OTAs, you have the actual mini camp itself. That's sort of the putting your hands in the clay part, right? For the first
That's
time.
right.
I mean, how much do you really look forward to that? Now you've done all this work, you get to actually mold it.
Well, that's the fun part. You mentioned rookie mini camp. So you're allowed to host a mini camp either the first week after the draft or the second week after the draft. And if you do it, this gets kind of convoluted, but if you do the second weekend, then you can keep your players came in for the mini camp. You can keep them there for the rest of the offseason. If you do the first weekend, you have to send them home for a week and then bring them back. So you'd say to yourself, well, why don't you just always do the second weekend? Well, what teams used to do, don't do this as much, is you used to sign a bunch of weekend waiver players. So you're in Philadelphia, for instance. You'd look at all the 1A and 1AA kids and kids from South Jersey, kids from Philly that you could sign for the weekend in order to host a minicamp. So you'd have your draft picks, the kids you signed after the draft, and then you'd sign a bunch of guys for the weekend that played D3, 1AA, so that you could have a camp. Because if you think about it, your draft class and your undrafted, that gets you to what, 20 players? So you sometimes would sign up to 40 more players just to host a camp. And I can remember when I was at the Vikings in 2007, Adrian Peterson was our first round pick, and our rookie mini camp quarterback was a young guy named Jimmy Terwilliger, who I believe he is now the coach at East Stroudsburg, but he was the quarterback at East Stroudsburg. So here he is taking snaps and handing off to, Adrian Peterson on wide zone. And it was and that's rookie mini camps for you. You kind of have all guys from all over, all skill levels, all sizes of colleges and that type of thing. But you're doing that so you can have a camp. Now, to the question of why would you do it that first weekend? Well, if you do it the second weekend, there's all these tryout guys that could get signed that first weekend and you won't get a shot at them for the second weekend, which brings me to when I was at the Vikings and we had a young man work out at our rookie minicamp named Adam Thielen, who, by the way, is still playing and still playing at a high level. But Adam was a tryout guy, and he was leaving the Vikings tryout that weekend, and he was going to the Packers the next weekend. And Rick Spielman, the GM, and they kept him there. They wouldn't let him leave. He was our, I think Leslie Frazier was the head coach, and signed him as a undrafted free agent. And again, the rest is history. But that's why you would do that the first weekend to keep those guys there. So the rookie minicamp is fun. It's your first exposure to those guys in total. As you well know, guys are not. You as a coach got to ascertain or understand where their conditioning level is. Yeah. And if you can imagine, here we are, the draft just ended. The guys have been preparing for the draft. They have not been preparing to play football. They've been preparing to run 40s and do the bench press and do the 3-cone. They're not playing a lot of football. So we try to have a program or a mini camp that is heavy on teaching, heavy on individuals. We did 7-on-7 certainly this year with 2 young quarterbacks. But you're trying to put together a plan where the guys can go play fast, but don't assume that this is July where the guys are in great football shape.
Yeah. Well, here we are now in July, right? We've had all this conversation, and we haven't even gotten yet to what people oftentimes see as the beginning of the season, training camp. So as the head coach, you head into training camp next week or so. What are the absolutes that you need to establish right out of the gate? What are the things that you're like, okay, man, first orders of business are blank?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because it's not the beginning. The off-season program is the beginning, and I make a point to the guys that that's really your foundation. And if you do it right in the off-season, in how you meet and how you practice, how you work out, you've set yourself up for a really good foundation that you can build upon, so that when you get to training camp, like you're mentioning, there's a ramp up that's necessary because the NFL says you can only practice for X number of minutes, and you can get to pads at this point. So there are parameters on it, but you really, once you get to training camp, you're going because you built that strong foundation. And I mean by that is like you're not going into meetings and reteaching wide zone. You're not going to meetings and reteaching. Okay, here's what a dig route is. That's all been done. Now you can go a little bit faster. And I think for us, and I would think anybody, you're getting to training camp to get your football team ready for week one. And the way to prepare to get ready to play football is to play football and practice football. And you and I have talked about this with some of the restrictions that you have in practice and what you can and cannot do. But as much as you can, work with while working within the framework of the rules, which obviously we're always going to do, you got to practice football. You got to practice tackling, and you got to practice blocking and catching, etc. You have to get these guys ready to go. Do you have to be unique how you go about that these days? Yes. I think the old days that you and I were a part of as players don't exist. You don't do some of the drills that were once done. The training camp is shorter than it ever was. It's less games than it ever was. But you have to be as mindful as you can of putting together a program that can get the guys ready for week one. And oh, by the way, it's a 17 game plus season. This is not, you're not getting ready for a 3 game. Like this is, you got to callous up your mind, body, spirit, because you're in it for the long haul.
Every season presents a new set of challenges, obviously. As you guys head to training camp, you've got 4 quarterbacks that all could conceivably wind up being your starter. When you think about that, and you don't have a ton of time, I think what I wrote it down, your first preseason game is August 8th, man, that's not that far away, right? How do you manage the reps just so that you feel like A, you can give each guy a fair shot, and then B, you can give whoever you ultimately decide on enough reps to be ready when you get going in week one?
Yeah, it's been a fun challenge, and I don't say challenge as a negative connotation. Having 4 guys that we really like, and they're all in totally different parts of their career. Oh, by the way, you got Joe who's 40, you got 2 young kids who are rookies, you got Kenny Pickett who's only in his 4th season, so they're all in different parts of their career. They're all awesome, awesome, awesome people. I can't stress to you how fun it has been with these guys. So the challenge, like you mentioned with the reps, we just have to get creative. And that really, I would tell you, coach, is going back to the off season, tried to be super intentional about how we repped each guy, what we asked them to do as we evaluate them. Now, you go into training camp, like I mentioned, you're getting your team ready to play. And it is true, we're going to have to pick a quarterback to be our starter. When we do that, exactly is in pencil. It's not something that we have to rush into. But I still want to see these guys in preseason game settings. I still want to see them in a setting where all the players are in full pads, which we haven't had yet because you're in the off season. You're doing 7-on-7, which is good. You're an offensive coach. You like 7-on-7, but it's not real football. So you want to see these guys in real football settings to put together a total picture. And then, like you mentioned, you're going to have to make a decision at some point with that and then get that player and get all the players around him. But I think you can also, in the meantime, get all these guys the amount of reps that they need to get ready and that you need in order to evaluate them.
I'll get you out of here on this, Coach. This has been a great conversation. Really interesting to just kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit. How do you know when you're ready? I mean, you have a start date. You know when week one is. When week one kicks off, do you feel confident that you're prepared, or are you always like, what are we going to get? Do you know when you're ready?
It's a great question, and we've had. I know we lost our week one game last year. We've won it the previous year. So there's like you mentioned before, every team is different. Every season is different. There are challenges that no one can foresee. That's why I always tell people, the NFL is so popular because it's the greatest reality show there is. You have no idea what's coming. I tell the coaches every year, there's going to be something happening this year none of us saw coming. So you got to buckle up and just understand that and go into it eyes wide open. But I think every football team develops its own personality and develops at a different pace sometimes. And sometimes early in July, you might have early in August, you might have a feel like I know who this football team is. There are seasons that you don't really start to figure out who you are until November, and then you start playing great football in November, December, January, and you can go on and win the Super Bowl doing that way. So I really think as coaches, we have to be flexible with our football teams and understand that the personality of the teams is different. Leadership emerges in different ways. Obviously, the ups and downs of a football season can tell you a lot about who you are and who you are as a football team. So I'd say as a coach, just keeping your ear down and listening, keeping your head on a swivel, and just kind of getting a sense for who your football team is, knowing that obviously you got to get your football team ready to play week one, but maybe the total idea of who your football team is evolves, and certainly I've seen that just with injuries. You have injuries to players, which are totally part of our football, our game, our sport, and then a team can change with an injury to this player and this guy's in, and you just have to be ready to navigate all that and really, maybe most importantly, understand that you have no control over a lot of this, and make sure that your football team is ready to be resilient in the heart of what I think is the best sport there is.
It certainly is, I think you
I
and
don't need
I
to.
are.
I don't need to convince you.
No, I think you and I are, we probably are a little diseased with our love. I tell our high school players all the time that like we love this game so much that we built our careers around it. So it is. I don't think there's any sport like it.
Well, I tell our players, they're playing a kid's game. I mean, this is the game of football, and it's their job, and every single one of our players remembers vividly their high school, and they remember their high school coach, and they remember their high school teammates, and that is a magical time for players. And I experienced it myself, and I try to make sure the guys never lose sight of what this game meant to them then, even though it's now a part of their profession. Don't lose sight of the fact that they're playing a kid's game.
Well, Coach, that's an awesome message. Go jump in the ocean one more time before you head back to Cleveland. It's like 73 degrees out there.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Coach. That was a blast. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach.
Absolutely. So for Coach Kevin Stefanski, this is Kevin Smith on the Call Sheet Daily. We'll catch everybody again tomorrow. Have a great day.